So I got two more things before we transition to our next love language. It looks like we're going to have some time. So last two things on affirming words. Loves makes requests and not demands. We tend to do that. We go over and say, I want this and I want that. Well, humble words will get our desires in His will. We got to look at Christ because He's going to give it a course. If we go over and request humbly, typically we can more get our requests. If I go over and I be like my daughter, like, I want food now. I'm like, you're a terrorist. I'm not doing that. Sorry. So, and lastly, if your spouse primary love language is words of affirmation, and I'm speaking this to myself, and yes, my wife, I will be doing these things more often. They thrive when you write the words down. Cards, love letters, etc. Not just on holidays and not just on Valentine's Day next week. Guys and girls, remember Valentine's Day. It's 1 week away. But we need to go over and do that. They love that. It just keeps that memory, like especially notes and things of that nature. They usually keep them forever. People that are words of affirmation. So even if you're just listing good qualities of your spouse, like on a card, that's going to win you brownie points, and you guys know what I mean on that.
So I have a question.
All
right. So if you've been in a relationship for years and years, and it's kind of maybe more challenging. You don't feel that same feeling that you had maybe in the first year, and maybe you're running out of ideas, or how do you have those engage in the kind words and the affirmations if you've been in a relationship for a long time?
Well, I think the first thing is you have to step out of that process, and sometimes we get so involved and so entrenched in a situation we never take a step out. We'll need to take a break and go and breathe. I'm not talking about separation, divorce, of course. I'm just like, hey, get some time outside, go over and breathe, go over and pray, of course, get some time in the scriptures. And then, we have to be man and woman enough, and typically women more go for counseling than men, but to go over and to ask for that help. It's kind of like if I don't know how to go build something in wood form or whatnot. I tried to put a wood thing together the other day, and I just sat there and I tried to grind it out as a man, but it didn't work out. I'm like, I'm putting all this extra strength and effort and whatnot, and I'm frustrated. I'm like, but I'll go to a dude and say, hey, I have problems with this wood thing, and I'm going to go fix this. We should be doing the same thing in our relationships, and that's what we're here for at Back to Basics. We also do consultations and workshops and seminars. We can come to you. So that's one way. And we're the first line of defense. And you can also then go to counselors like Heather and other people and whatnot and get that third-party perspective. From the Christian perspective, I'd really think it's like, hey, go to your community group leader, go to your pastor, go to maybe your marriage mentors and whatnot. And there's usually them in the churches and whatnot. And sometimes even Christian coaches and counselors. So, I mean, there's a multitude of resources. And then you have like books and blogs and other things of that nature. I mean, we live in 2016. I mean, come on, we can take text messages for us doing the conversation, and also you guys can call in. And a friendly reminder for that is 253-584-1480. That's 253-584-1480, or you can text us at Back to Basics on Facebook. So that gives you a quick summary on what words of affirmation is, and Heather's now going to go into physical touch. We have some time to go over that.
Okay, so this is a really key point for Gary Chapman, Dr. Gary Chapman, as far as physical touch. It's one of the 5 love languages, and it's a very important one. So for folks that are, that is something that that is their love language. How do you do that? So I don't know, Faustman, if you have any ideas, if you're starting a new relationship or if you've been in one for quite some time, about, how do you demonstrate, this love language?
On physical touch, I mean, in a new relationship, it's got to be simple. I mean, everybody is in that love stage. You can do cuddling, you can do hand-holding, you can do kissing, and if, my personal belief is wait for sex until marriage. But some people walk into that. I mean, there's many different options. There's some that are not even radio worthy. We can talk about that more in our blog. But there's many different things. I mean, even the simple thing of going over and stroking somebody's hair. I mean, my daughters love physical touch, cuddling. I mean, they go over and, some people like their feet massaged. Some people like to get pampered. I mean, there's a multitude of ways. I mean, unless you're born under a rock, you should know what physical touch is. Even if it's your deadest language, which is one of mine, I can pretty much figure that one out. But, sometimes we can't. So that's why we go on the radio show and we give you guys this advice. But, so.
And I think that the impact of having physical touch, so somebody, I heard one woman say, I just love it when my husband comes up from behind me while I'm washing dishes and caresses my lower back. And to her, that was just, just incredible. It was just that small gesture that showed that he cared, he was physically present, and that meant the world to her. And yet it was very simple. And there's so many examples that are like that. A lot of couples, they'll cuddle and, either in front of the fireplace, watch a movie, and it's just having that time together, that and that physical presence, and just, showing that person your attention and your affection. And I think that that's huge. So for people where this is their love language, that's pretty necessary.
Yeah, the biggest thing we need to remember, if it's one of our weak languages, we don't speak it, we need to go over and regularly remind ourselves of that. Like I said, physical touch is one of my lowest ones. I have to continually remind myself, okay, my wife and my kids are looking for physical touch, and I need to find any way possible. Even though I shudder, cuddling and doing all these things, and I look for these resources in another way and not in the way they're looking for, I need to go over and be sacrificial to go do that, because that's going to edify them. That's going to help them grow. That's going to fill their love tank. And that's what we're teaching, is how to fill people's love tanks.
And I think you mentioned this too, is like you can show physical touch in very simple ways. I mean, whether it's holding hands, caressing, massaging, hugging. If somebody is sick, holding their hand, and, all of those things. I think, and tell me what you think about this, but sometimes folks are like, oh, I'm afraid, let's say you're not a physical touch person, and maybe you're in a relationship with somebody who is. Sometimes I'll hear that there's concerns that, this person is too clingy, they're suffocating, they're too needy. How do you respond to that?
That's a very hard thing to go over and do. I mean, especially if it's your weak language. I mean, I guess you have to question if you're in that love stage first off, because in that love stage, it's just fast and it's quick, and the pheromones are there, and you just want to do everything under the sun to get every transfer of that electricity, because even a handhold transfers 600 volts of electricity. You feel that spark, and everything else is going on and whatnot. So, that would be the first question I would say. I'm like, are you really in love with this person? Because during that time, those first couple years, as Dr. Chapman talked about, and Timothy Keller and some other people, is those first couple of years you have just this physical attractant side of this. So, but at the same time, when you're looking at it from a biblical perspective, you want to keep that modesty. So, it depends on what the relationship. You got to know people's values and morals and whatnot. So the person that could be super clingy and the other person might not be, they'd be like, hey, I have values in Christ, and I'm going to go over and wait until marriage, and I think this and this and this is going to be a stumbling block for me. We can walk into that instantaneously. It can go so fast. So those are the first questions that I would ask. And then secondly, I guess that's about it for now. That's all I can think about.
Okay. So, going back to physical touch, again, it can be very simple as holding hands or comforting another person. And again, the impact can be very profound, where you're comforting and grounding another person. It's warmth, it's tenderness, and it definitely is a great way, of course, to show your love for someone. So, I don't know if you have any questions, Faustman.
I don't know right now. Does any of the people on the radio have any questions? We still have a few minutes left. Again, our contact number is 253-584-1480. And again, for you new millennials, you can text us back at Back to Basics on Facebook via the Messenger, and that's back, BACK, the number 2, Basics on Facebook. So, I guess my questions is that what's your primary love language? Either physical touch or words of affirmation. How does that communicate in your relationship? And then maybe we'll do the question vice versa for me.
Ooh. Well, I think, like in the workplace, you have relationships, professional relationships with your supervisor and your coworkers. And so, giving props is always nice. Like, hey, you did a really good job. And that really, and then when it's genuine, it's not, artificial. It really does make you feel really great. You feel more, competent and, confident. So I think that, that's really good. And then personally, of course, it's always feels nice when you're admired and appreciated, and I think words of affirmation definitely does that. As far as physical touch, it's very, again, very warmth and comforting, and you feel secure. So it could be, again, anything simple to, I think the challenge with physical touch is if what I hear is people that have been in relationships for years and years, and they're like, ooh, how do you sustain that? So I think that is something that some people have encountered, but I think the physical touch, I mean, again, it can be, it can show that somebody admires you and appreciates you, and can, definitely is very grounding.
On my side, for the work and professional side, I mean, some of them are obvious, like physical touch. It depends on the work environment, but try to eliminate that stuff, especially if you're military or you're in a business professional or government job. Specifically on the other ones, they're a little more easier to display. Like, you can display acts of service at work, which we'll talk about next week. You can display words of affirmation at work. You can display gifts. You can display those types of things depending on the environment. On a home basis, I mean, you have to just take that continual reevaluation to say, where do you sit at in that gift spectrum? So it looks like our show is done for now, so we'll start the conversation again next week on Acts of Service. You can also continue the conversation on Back to Basics on Facebook, and for next week you can call us in and bring some questions. So we hope you have a great day, and God bless.
And thank you for having me, Faustman.
Oh, you're welcome.
There was so much on my mind, searching for that peace, but the peace I could not find. So then I kneeled down to pray. Pray, help me please. Then he said, you don't have to cry.
Clay Radio, your conversation station. KLAY Lakewood, Tacoma on 1180 AM.